All right, so we are going to be learning about currency. So I think it was P Diddy, Puff Daddy, whatever his name is, said it's all about the Benjamins. But when we're in other countries, it's not about Benjamins. It's about whatever they call it, pences or um, what's I guess the pounds. Probably. I
Pounds,
don't know. I
euros,
don't know. It's like, is
pesos.
there a nickname for some of these foreign currencies?
Some of them do, yeah. So like the Canadian dollar, they call the uni.
Oh, the
Oh, sorry,
uni, the
loonie.
loonie. Okay.
Yeah. They call the New Zealand dollar, Kiwi dollar, Aussie dollar.
Ah, gotcha.
Pound, they call,
Hmm.
sometimes they call it cable. And that actually dates back to long, long time ago when they used to send transactions actually across the Atlantic via a cable wire.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
so that pair, pound dollars, is actually called cable or nicknamed cable.
That I learned something
So
new today. So,
yeah,
all right. So we're going to be talking about all things currency and how you can avoid some of the hidden costs of foreign currency, which is one of the things that comes up when you're selling outside of the U.S. or wherever it is you live, and you're having to deal with foreign currencies. So, just to make sure audio is working, because sometimes technology doesn't work the way we'd like, you can click that little thumbs up icon, and we're going to let some more people kind of trickle in. And for those of you watching the replay, thank you for joining us as we are talking about currency and all the fun things regarding uh, foreign currencies and how you can keep more of it in your pockets when you bring it back to US dollars or wherever your home currency is. So, just real quick, if you don't mind, TJ Hyland, my guest from Payoneer, tell everybody just a little bit about yourself and your your background in the world of foreign currency and how that affects e-commerce, or at least probably a long question, but just
sure.
start with your background.
Well, yeah, so I'm TJ Hyland. I currently head up the partnerships team at Payoneer, responsible for North America. But I've actually been in the e-commerce world, specifically cross-border selling world, for almost over 6 years now. So
Okay.
I started with a company called World First, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, depending on where you guys are around the world.
Hmm.
And what they did and what Payoneer does is help sellers who are based in one country, selling in another country, and then looking to bring their funds back to their home country. So we'll talk through a little bit about the options that you have, and then the pricing solutions, and what is best for you and your business to not only encompass the transaction of bringing your sales back, but any sort of other payments you might have to make to a supplier or to VAT or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because there are some things involved with bringing money back and forth, which we'll talk about, just kind of the basics of foreign currency and how all that works. Because it's it's not just it's 1 to 1.3 and it's always that set number. It can change, right?
Constantly changing. So not even every minute; it's every second. And you know, it's not just you know there it's very unpredictable. That's what I'll say in terms of what actually affects the FX markets across the board. It used to be very data driven. Now it's still data driven, but has a big portion of social and geopolitical news that affects the markets, elections, which we might touch on,
Hmm.
which we did in our recorded video, but then also, natural disasters and the hurricanes that are currently in the Gulf, that could potentially weaken certain currencies depending on which markets it's affecting.
Okay. Yeah, because it's one of the things we don't necessarily think about. If you're always doing everything in your own home currency, it's you think you're kind of shielded from different currencies, but in a way you're really not, right? Because you're still like things you buy could be affected, the prices could be affected.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we look at Americans and the US dollar is accepted almost everywhere in the world. If you're on holiday in Europe, you can likely pay for things with US dollars. When you go to pay your supplier in China, there's a high possibility that they will allow you to pay in USD. Any other sort of vendor payments, USD is accepted. So we've become a little bit spoiled in the sense of not having to worry about currency conversions. But if you look at Europe and Europeans, before the euro, which only came about, I think less than 20 years ago, there
Hmm.
used to be how many different currencies throughout Europe. There's
Mm.
still the the currency exchange between pounds and euros if you were a European or a Brit looking to do business in the other region. So Europeans are way more, I guess, educated on FX and currency markets, where Americans, for no fault of their own, haven't really had to, so they don't. But that's definitely one thing that we want to work on, and a big part of what we do is to educate people that there are different exchange rates, that they are constantly moving, and if you are invoiced in U.S. dollars, somebody is going to be paying for an exchange somewhere. So maybe that exchange rate is built into the pricing that you're receiving. So different things you can do to dial down to improve your bottom line.
Okay. Gotcha. So one of the things for those watching, many folks are watching this are probably already have their ticket to the Global Empire Summit. Some folks watching this might be like, what is this whole foreign currency? How is this even coming into play? So just help us understand. So, one of the things to think about is if, let's say you're selling on Amazon in the US and you go to sell on Amazon in Canada, or we'll use the UK as an example, because I think we have it teed up already on a screen to share some stuff here in a moment. But how does that work? So like if I'm getting my disbursement every 2 weeks, am I just getting like, I just give it to my bank figures it out and all just kind of happens in the back end?
So you definitely have that option. If you are a US-based business listing your products on Amazon UK, you are going to get paid in British pounds. When you do that, or when you're looking to get your funds back to the US, you have a couple of options. One of the options is that you can absolutely put in your USD bank account into the marketplace, and the marketplace will convert your pounds back to dollars, every 2 weeks or however often they disperse out to you. One of the downsides to that is that, typically the marketplaces do not offer you the best or the most optimal exchange rate. So typically marketplaces charge anywhere from 3.5 to 4%. I've seen it vary in different ways depending on which market it is. So the other option to that is to use a company like Payoneer. So what we would do is we provide sellers with local receiving accounts to receive your sales in GBP from Amazon UK or from any of those marketplaces, and then hold your funds in GBP. From there, you have a couple of options, which we touched on earlier. You could pay out to your VAT in local currency, which we can go into a little deeper in a minute. You could pay any vendors or you could suppliers, or if we're going apples to apples compared to the previous process, we can convert those pounds back to dollars for you at a much better exchange rate. So it's really dependent on your volume, but it's usually anywhere from 1 to 2%, which is about half as expensive as what the marketplace are charging. But like I said, it also gives you a little more freedom and flexibility and more control over your money.
Okay, great. Well, I've got it teed up here that we can show people a little bit more of what we're talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and add to the stream. This is Google right now. This is basically, I looked up GBP to USD. So if you're bringing your British pounds into US dollars, it says 1 to 1.32. So what exactly is this rate that I'm looking at now?
So this is what we'd call the interbank rate.
Okay.
So this is the rate that large financial institutions that trade more than, I think it's $7 million a year, actually have access to. So this is any financial services company, banks, etc., would, in theory, have access to trading at this rate. You, me, sellers on Amazon or any marketplace don't have access to this rate for your own exchanges. And that's definitely where a little bit of a confusion comes in, but still means that we're working on educating people. So we can dive in a little bit on this and what it looks like from there. But like you said, this would be the interbank rate.
Okay. Well, just because sometimes I'm not the best at math on the fly, I went ahead and teed it up to be able to say a round number. So basically using this £1 sterling equals 1.32 US dollars. So if, let's just say our disbursement, I only chose this number arbitrarily because it, as of this moment, is approximately $1,000.
Right.
So if I was using the interbank rate and I had a disbursement coming to me of 756 pounds and 73 pence, as they would refer to cents as, I did know that one. Um, Earlier, I had no idea what some of the nicknames of the currency, but TJ was nice enough to share some nicknames of other foreign currencies. But I would expect to get $1,000. So just to kind of show people, like, okay, this is what it is as you look it up. So if Amazon, let's just say, we'll use a marketplace, which could be hypothetically Amazon. We don't want to put exactly in their mouth, but so basically, Amazon, they can't just put £1,000 directly into my U.S. bank account, and I wouldn't have like a separate login at Bank of America for £1,000 because Bank of America says we want U.S. dollars, right?
Right. Yeah. So in this situation, if the rate was 1.32,
Hmm.
and we talk about, the marketplace taking a certain percentage of, 3.5 to 4% on a conservative side of 3.5%, that means that your rate would be around 1.27. So in reality, 1.27 times the 756 pounds that you have there means
Hmm.
that you're actually just going to receive $962 into
Okay.
your US dollar account. So that would be the exchange rate, which we see here, plus whatever fee, or I guess minus whatever fee um, the marketplace or their bank or whomever would charge. Now, in comparison, if we look at that same 1.32 and we take off 1%, which is what a lot of companies like Payoneer do, your rate would be around 1.3186. So we do that same math and multiply that by the amount of pounds that you have, you would receive $996. So I think that was about 20 to $30 more than if the marketplace was to do that transaction for you. Obviously, we're talking about percentages here, so the larger volume you have, the
Right.
larger the savings could potentially be.
Yeah, and I chose the $1,000 just because it's easy for math. So also just to kind of put it another way, so like if it was 4% they're charging, just using some rough math off the top of my head, for $1,000, I'd be getting about 960, right?
Right. Yeah, if we
Okay,
went that way. Yeah.
gotcha. So because I like to think of it at the end of the day, how much money is coming into my account. Now, with Payoneer, it would be 990, 980, or around there if it's 1 or 2%, right?
Right. So around 190. So about
Okay.
$30 difference in this case.
Yeah. So that, I mean, but that adds up. So if you do that 26 times a year, and you're getting, let's say, $30 difference, 30
Well,
times.
Well, it would be $30 times, say if that's $1,000 per transaction. So it's
Mhm.
actually $30 times twice a month times 12 months a year. That's 700 and something dollars savings,
Yes.
720 savings. Um, Obviously, as we mentioned, your volumes go up. The differences in FX rates and the opportunity to save goes up as well.
Gotcha. So just so everyone also understands, so for those folks who are watching that maybe they have a Amazon UK account or Amazon Canada account, and they're just moving the money straight into their US bank account because Amazon made it convenient. Amazon didn't say, "Hey, we're going to charge you." So is it, from your experience? I'd like to hear from you. Is it a line item that they're going to see like in their transaction summaries, or is it going to be built into the rate?
So it'll be built into the rate.
Mhm.
And I don't necessarily think it's anybody's hiding anything. It's just
Right.
that's how the industry is. You would see the amount of pounds that you earned, less any fees that you had to pay to Amazon, storage fees or whatever. So whatever amount they're meant to pay out to you, then you'd see an exchange rate, and then you'd see a U.S. dollar. So the exchange rate would include any sort of fee any of the marketplaces would charge.
Gotcha. So basically, it's baked into that exchange rate because at the end of the day, it's not a line item. And that, like you said, that's not a like they're trying to hide it from you. It's just
Just the
it's
way the industry is, really.
right.
Yeah.
So it's
So
basically like you got a base rate, but you're kind of paying extra. And sometimes with interest rates, whether it be on savings or loans, sometimes there's some sort of base rate, but your actual rate you get or pay could bake in some fees, essentially, right?
yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like if you look at mortgage rates, for example,
Hmm.
there are additional fees that are somewhat hidden, but just normally part of the total fees. that you would pay. So similar in this case, that no one's hiding anything. It's just the way
Right.
that it is. I wouldn't expect them to break it out and say you're being charged 3.5% on the FX. Just not really how I do it. If you looked at the Payoneer side, it would probably be pretty similar in the sense of you have your pound amount, you have your dollar amount, you have your rate. You're absolutely, that's all information for you and your transaction history.
Okay, great. So let's say I'm using a company like Payoneer. So is it just Payoneer receives the money and it goes straight into my US bank account as soon as I get the disbursement? Is it like automatic, or is it there's something that kind of happens in the middle?
Well, there's an option, right? So if
Okay.
you wanted to, you could take your pounds and immediately when they're received into the account, convert them back into US dollars, sent to your Bank of America or Chase or whichever account you use. The alternative is you have the ability to hold the funds in your Payoneer account. Now, a couple of reasons why you would do that that we touched on. The main one being paying VAT or tax obligations. So a big proponent of selling internationally, whether you are selling or whether you're looking to sell internationally, especially into Europe, is you absolutely have to have your VAT number or EORI number
Hmm.
in order to sell throughout Europe. And you have to make those payments. I know a couple of years ago, we've talked before, there was a little bit of the Wild West and Amazon wasn't being cracked down on, and the countries weren't cracking down on Amazon or the sellers. But absolutely now it's an important thing, and that's kind of what we've done to create a platform to enable sellers from wherever they are in the world, if they're selling into the EU, to use a
Hmm.
Payoneer platform to pay directly to the VAT authorities, whether that's in the UK or in Germany, or if you had to pay to a fiscal rep in, I think, Spain and Italy, you can do that with Payoneer.
Okay. So basically, what we can kind of take away from this is anytime money moves, you're not going to get exactly the rate that you see online if you look up on xe.com or whatever. So that's kind of like the base rate that banks charge each other, but your rate is going to be a little less favorable. So you want to make it as favorable as possible.
Right.
But if you're paying, kind of like I was mentioning before, if all your life you're just paying everything in US dollars and nothing changes, you don't really see any currency conversion fees. And the same thing applies though too, right? If I'm paying everything is in pounds and it all stays in pounds, right?
Exactly. So if we're looking at paying VAT, one of the advantages to paying with a GBP balance that you might hold with Payoneer is that there's going to be no fees. So if Amazon or whichever marketplace is going from um, pounds to the Payoneer pound account,
Hmm.
that will absolutely be no fees. And then you go from pounds in your Payoneer account to pounds with HMRC and the Queen.
Uh-huh.
There's no fees on that part as well. So same currency transfer as if you were sending dollars to your friend in the US in dollars. There's going to be no fee on that. The alternative to that is if you were to bring all your funds back automatically via Amazon or any other marketplace, or even via Payoneer, and then you had to go pay to HMRC, you're now adding up quite a few number of fees. So if we look at it, you would have that initial fee of going from pounds back to dollars.
Hmm.
Um, then you would have to go to your bank or whatever source you use to send an international bank wire to HMRC or to the VAT authorities, which typically has a flat fee on it of anywhere from $40 to $50 on that. And then the bank or whomever you're using is going to charge an FX fee, a conversion fee on top of that.
Hmm.
Uh, Typically, banks charge anywhere from 5 to 10% in the US. So you're going to have whatever percentage it is to bring pounds back to dollars. Then you're going to have a percentage to go from dollars back to pounds, plus a flat fee of $45. And depending on the size of your business, that $45 wire fee could be more than your quarterly VAT payment.
Mm.
So solutions like Payoneer and our VAT portal are absolutely ones that are there to help mitigate uh, redundant costs, I guess, or redundant
Okay.
exchange fees.
Got it. So it's basically one of those things because it never leaves British pounds as long as I keep them there in British pounds. Because I have kind of this middle ground holding account. It's the same thing as when I get my disbursement, Amazon's taken out in British pounds. their commissions, their fulfillment fees, their inventory fees, everything else. And then I can take my quarterly payments that I need to make to the Queen, Her Majesty, as we learned about in yesterday's live training with the folks over at Avast. I can take that money and I can pay Her Majesty's revenue and customs, whatever I owe, or whatever, that authority. And then there's no hidden cost there. So the
Right.
interesting thing is, as I'm understanding this, if I've got costs, if I got sales, which are going to be in the local currency, I take out my Amazon fees, for example, and then I subtract out maybe even my PPC if I'm hopefully putting PPC coming out of my disbursements, not a credit card, and then I pay my VAT. It's whatever portion really is left over that's subject to these currency conversions anyway, right? So I want to try to keep as much of my payments in the local currency.
Well, exactly, and we talk about paying VAT from your Payoneer portal,
Mm-hmm.
VAT portal, but there's actually other options. If you had to pay a supplier, if you had to pay a vendor, you brought up the team over at Vask. They're based in the UK, and they help a lot of businesses register. But then they also have ongoing fees or whatever that you have to pay to them. You can do that. Use Payoneer balance to pay to a Vask. Or if you had to pay to I think Yana's on here and YLT Translations.
Yes.
Or maybe she was on the previous one, but
No,
if
she
you
was
had
on
to
the
pay for any services like that, if you're based in the U.S. and they're based in Europe, and they have euros or pounds, sure, they absolutely will accept U.S. dollars. But for them, it's easier, and you mitigate costs and you lower your exposure if you are able to pay with them or pay to them in local currency.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So you can also pay whoever's doing your accounting. So just one of the things I would recommend to folks, because I've seen people stressed out on this, and we're going to go on a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's helpful to people, is that, I went to my CPA and they told me they couldn't help me with the taxes in Europe, so I can't do it. But I would say if you needed to get a tooth pulled, you wouldn't go to your eye doctor. You would go to the actual, even though they both have the title doctor on the front of their name,
It's a good
it's
analogy.
different. So
That
if
is a
you
good
want,
analogy. Yeah.
yeah, I think I borrowed something like that. So I don't think it's totally original, but I think all art is stolen, I think is the phrase. But anyway, so if you have like you should be using somebody that's knowledgeable in the area. So that way, if you're paying them, because they probably want to be paid in pounds if they're in the UK, or paid in euros if they're in most of mainland Europe. So you want to pay that, and you could pay them using this Payoneer account without going back and forth between US dollars and then back to British pounds, and so saving currency conversion fees and potential wire transfer fees and all that.
Absolutely.
And I also have a prep center I use personally that I use Payoneer. So
Another thing that you can pay to. Yep.
yeah.
And
So
we
all
didn't
right.
even talk about supplier payments, which is
Oh yeah.
probably a huge portion. But not everyone sources from China. If you if you sell in Canada and source from Canada, you can make that payment, or throughout Europe, or even if you sold in Canada or in Europe and you wanted to pay to your supplier in China in local currency or in USD, you could do that as well. So
Okay, gotcha.
just
And then
kind of
it's
limiting the amount of transactions, because otherwise you go from pounds back to dollars to China. So
yeah, because anytime it changes, we lose a little bit, even
of
if it's a
course,
small amount. That small amount over time, it's that hidden cost that we didn't know about. So, all right. So for everyone that's watching this, just want to be fully transparent. Payoneer is a sponsor of the Global Empire Summit, and at the same time, too, I've been using Payoneer now for about 2 years
yeah,
as a client, and I've actually been working with TJ when it comes to the currency stuff for longer than 2 years, because I actually followed him to Payoneer. So this is all stuff that I'm doing this myself. These strategies
right.
I'm employing. This is not theoretical. So if you're interested in Payoneer, there is a link in the description down below to Payoneer, and I'll or maybe it's above. Facebook, I think Facebook is above. Yeah, Facebook. If you're
Somewhere.
watching this on Facebook, if it's above. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's down below. So somewhere where the description is, there is a link. And in full disclosure, that is an affiliate link as well. So, but let's just talk about this a little bit more. So, one of the things too, with we were talking about, you have the ability to make supplier payments, pay people in the local currency, or at least minimize the number of times you're transferring currencies around from one currency to the other using an account like Payoneer. So basically, we set it up, we link it, and now Amazon, instead of converting it from British pounds to US dollars, they just put British pounds in our British pounds account. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, because if we did it the other way, where Amazon was just sending us US dollars and they're converting it, we have no control over when that conversion happens. It's just when the disbursement happens, right?
Right. So whatever your disbursement day is, that typically they would convert from pounds to dollars or euros to dollars the same day. So you would get your funds, same day as they're dispersed from the international marketplaces.
Gotcha. However, if it's in the Payoneer account, which is basically our holding account in British pounds, we could say, I'm going to wait till next week. Now, I know you and I have talked about that. It's kind of a dangerous thing to sometimes play the game of, oh, it'll come back, because you never know with anything in financial, but you do have that ability, right?
Absolutely. So you do. So you have the ability to hold the funds to take advantage of all the payout options that we talked about before. When we talk about exchange rates, there's in our world two real beliefs. The one is the law of averages, which is funds come in, funds come out every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, I'm not really going to worry. If the market's up, the market's down, I'm just going to go automatic transfer from pounds back to dollars or whatever it may be. The other one is to watch the market, and potentially if you're moving a lot of money, there's an opportunity there. So Kevin, actually, probably if you want to click on 1 month or 5 days, it would give on the chart there.
Okay.
So 5 days. So the flat line, meaning it's over the weekend because the market is closed. But then we see some volatility in there. In this case, beneficial for anybody in the UK or based in the US selling into the UK. So in that case, you would want more pounds or the most pounds possible. So what we're looking at here is when we talk about exchange rates, some people like to sit and wait and try and find that peak that we're looking at, whether it's 132 or whatever. But with that always comes a risk, right? So if you sit there waiting long enough, there's potential that it just goes the opposite direction. Not dissimilar to the stock market, right? You always think there's going to be a rebound. There's always going to be a rebound, and that is more likely than not going to happen. It's just a matter of when. You might either get back to the level you're at, potentially higher, again, potentially lower. But what I find and why I'm not a huge fan of that methodology is because you could be waiting and waiting and waiting, and you're not putting that money, which is sales revenue, back into your business. You're not buying more product. You're not, increasing your advertising spend or any of these other tools that you might use to take your business from here to the next level. So if you have enough cash flow in your business and you're not worried about every single dollar and spend, I think you're probably pretty unique in this space because everyone's kind of worried about cash flow. But you have the option, and that's really what we're saying is you have the option. There's two methodologies of what you could do. You can hold your funds. You can convert automatically. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm not endorsing one or the other, but I know what I would do.
Right. But you at least have the ability to choose, which is nice.
For sure.
Now, one of the things, just to go backtrack to a slightly longer period of time. So this is the pound to dollar over the course of a year. So the last year, it still stayed relatively stable. So 1.23 versus 1.32, which people may say, oh, that's kind of a large difference. Well, you really remember, whatever your sales are, it's the small part that you're actually bringing back.
Right.
If you're paying things like VAT and any other local costs in the local currency. And relative to things like the Argentinian peso, which is a whole lot more stable than the Venezuelan currency or Zimbabwe, for
Peso, yeah.
example. Because for the most part, Amazon's not going to put themselves in a country where currency is going to cause them a huge problem. So there's some smart bean counters, so to speak, that have made the decision what countries to go into. And so for the most part, these are pretty stable currencies. Because even if we go back, oh, sorry, not 5 years, 5 days, 5 years, it's still relatively stable. And this
Right.
biggest jump or this biggest difference right here is actually from Brexit, right? That was when Brexit was announced.
Yeah, June of 2016. And what is also important to remember, if we look even back 5 years, it was around 1.50 and now it's around 1.32. It's
Hmm.
not like it's going from 1.50 to zero. The difference
Right.
is 2/10 of a decimal place, right?
Hmm.
So yes, that could affect your business if you're moving hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, sure. But in reality, it's not, and for most sellers, it's not going to make you a millionaire or break you down to zero. So kind of understanding that this is just a natural part of doing business internationally.
Hmm.
Yes, there's steps and tools that you can use to mitigate any risk that you have or you might have, and kind of level the playing field for everyone. Is good, but like I said, it's not going to make or break your business. There's different aspects to it that can help and hurt for sure.
Hmm.
Would be remiss to not say that, but uh,
Right.
it's generally, like you said, a pound dollar is probably the strongest currency pair, maybe besides euro dollar, but pound dollar is probably one of the more strong currency pairs that's been around for the longest time, has the most transactions on it. So yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things to think about is even if your pounds get a little bit more weak to the dollar, which is to your detriment when you're bringing it back. Um, so the thing to keep in mind is, you know, if let's say as your total sales, we're probably talking about a fraction of a percent of what the actual, even if it's a 10% swing, it's
Right.
probably not going to be a 10% effect on your business. I mean, your margins, it's going to be a small percentage of your margin that is affected by this. And if you don't have the margins to do, to be affected by a 10-point currency swing, you probably shouldn't even be in business in the US, I would say.
Well, right. So in this case, we're talking about 10% swing. And for you as a seller, it's a percentage of that percentage.
Hmm.
That, and then there's, it's all percentages generally. So we're talking about minuscule actual effect on your business.
Gotcha. Yeah, because at the end of the day, your business, you're bringing in additional money when you go to another marketplace. So if you're selling in Canada or the UK, that's additional money you weren't going to have either way. So if the currency changes a little bit, that's a like you said, it's kind of a cost of doing business because you you can't go into the other marketplace if you're not able to have some weathering of a slightly different, but it's not. But as we said, it's not that huge of a difference.
Right. It is a cost of doing business. And perhaps it is, to steal your phrase, a line item on your balance sheet, something that you have to account for when you are selling internationally. There are advantages to it as well. So something we've talked about, selling into the UK. If you sold something for $20 in the US, and it's likely that you can list that product also for £20 in the UK. Whereas the pound is valued at more. So when you convert that on paper from pounds back to dollars, you're looking at something that's probably around 28 US dollars. So that
Mm,
helps take into account any sort of FX margin that you might have, any international shipping or VAT payments, or VAT setup fees that you have. There's a little more wiggle room to play with in pricing in the EU. Um, don't go extreme, obviously, but
right.
you know, 20 pounds is pretty normal compared to $20.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's one of those things too. Is as you're doing this, you start realizing that your competitors are playing the same ballgame too, for the most part. And
Absolutely.
so so you can potentially raise your prices and things like that. So if you do have a situation where you're seeing oh, the currency is different. It's not like the currency is like whatever your price is static. If chances are over the long term, if the currency is just on a downward trend, well, you're going to probably be raising your prices, and so will your competitors, because most countries are not an island where their pricing of the goods in general are not affected by, whatever inflationary pressures their currency has, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. So, all right. So, for everyone that is watching, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. If you're watching this on the replay, we'll do our best to get back to you with answers. And like I said, I've been using Payoneer for several years. That's how they ended up being a sponsor of the Global Empire Summit. And we're here to answer your questions. And I'm just going to keep bantering because I love kind of geeking out on some of this stuff. So what are some other things people should think about when it comes to foreign currencies?
One of the things we talked about previous was paying to suppliers.
Okay.
So if you look at China, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of times your suppliers are more than willing and able to accept US dollars. And when they do that, what they're typically doing is going to add in a bit of margin on the dollar amount that they're going to give you, right? So what they're realizing is, we're going to make it easy because they know it's not easy to pay into Chinese yuan. So they're going to say, we're going to make it easy to receive payment in dollars, which is fine. But then at the same time, they have to then somewhere down the line convert back into local currency. So what I usually tell sellers is, if you are getting invoiced in US dollars from a supplier in China, great, keep that invoice in dollars, but also ask them for an invoice in local currency. One is you're able to see the margin or the percentage that they're charging you, and to go from there. But additionally, if it's that drastic of a difference and they're not willing to budge on the dollar amount, you have the ability to pay them in local currency. So you'll want to see what that looks like. And companies like Payoneer can absolutely help make those payments too.
Yes, absolutely. Great points. All right, so we got a couple questions that are starting to come in. So if you watching have questions and you're like, this makes sense, I like the idea of the extra dollars and cents and coming from pounds and pence and euros and cents and loonies or kiwis or wherever, but you're just something like not quite making sense, feel free to drop it in the chat. So one of the questions we do have here from Tracy asks, do you have one account for all currencies or one account for each currency? It's a good question.
It is. So what we do is we provide local receiving accounts in whichever currency you are selling. So you would have one Payoneer account, which you'd be able to view all your currencies under. But within that, you'd hold a British pound balance, euros, Canadian dollars, Mexican pesos, Japanese yen, Australian dollars, Singapore dollars. And if you're outside the US, selling into the US, we would give you a US dollar account as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, and one of the things that I've come to find is it's pretty simple because every country's got their version of routing an account. They don't call it routing an account. It's kind of all one long string in Europe. They call it an IBAN. Yeah. And there's
international bank account number.
Okay. Yeah. So there's something, like that everywhere. And so Payoneer just kind of gives you those numbers. And you can give that to Amazon, and then Amazon will put the money into that account, and then you have the ability to move it around as needed.
And that's something to touch on as well, is every one of the accounts that we're offering to sellers is a unique account. So it's created for each seller. It's not, commingled funds or anything like that. Each one has your own individual account within Payoneer.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Shawn Chamberlain asks, does Payoneer connect to QuickBooks Online?
I believe so.
Okay.
That's where I'm going to leave it. Shawn, feel free to connect with me after this. I have to double check, but I believe that we do. Okay.
Yeah, and I use Xero, and what I do is I just give my bookkeeper the statements every month from Payoneer, and then they just balance that out with, how everything else is in my accounting, bookkeeping stuff. And one thing I will say though is it's nice is I know QuickBooks and Xero both, but since this is a QuickBooks question, they both have like a foreign transaction version. It might be a little bit more expensive, maybe like 10, 20 bucks a month more, but your return on investment on that 10, 20 bucks a month going international is pretty good. Or, also too, if, someone like Shawn, I'm not sure if Shawn's selling in the foreign marketplaces now, but the amount of money he would be
Right.
saving by using, a company like Payoneer would definitely pay for that cost of the additional fees for Xero / QuickBooks. All right, and then Tracy asked another question: do you have Amazon KDP or Amazon merch using Payoneer? So I'm assuming this is if you're selling in another country doing Kindle Direct or Amazon merch.
Kindle Direct. I didn't know what KDP was, so
Gotcha. Yeah.
I was trying to figure that out. Do we have KDP?
I would imagine because you're just giving them an account number. Like, I don't
Yeah,
think Amazon even really knows.
It just depends on your disbursement method. If they allow you to disperse into local currency and allow you to change the bank account details, the Payoneer accounts that we give you are totally usable in that case.
Yeah, exactly. So, which that's definitely something to think about. There is, that you could potentially use, because Payoneer is not an exclusive Amazon Seller Central thing. It could be other Amazon things, and then also you could use Payoneer if you're selling Walmart in Canada, right?
Right. So the conversations typically surrounds Amazon
Right.
for they're the largest marketplace in the space, largest globally as well. But we work with I think over 100 different marketplaces around the world, Walmart being one of them. Whether you're in Walmart in the US, Walmart Canada, Linio, Lazada, Price Minister, I forget the rest of them, but there's a lot of them throughout Europe. So it doesn't have to be Amazon. We talk about Amazon a lot because it is the marketplace that people are most familiar with, especially when expanding internationally. If you're familiar with how Amazon US works, Amazon Canada is very similar. Amazon UK is very similar. Only when you start to get into the different language marketplaces, things change a little bit. But if you're fulfilling via FBA, what's the difference between sending a package to warehouse in Kentucky or in Toronto, right? So that's a real big advantage of Amazon.
Yeah, it's so true, because one of the things is if you already understand Amazon and your products that sell in the US have similar products that are selling internationally, chances are you're leaving money on the table by not expanding. Because I know sometimes, especially lately, there's kind of gone from this sense in the Amazon world of just go all in on Amazon.com and just do the best you can to, I got to diversify a little bit here. So, there's kind of a little bit of, I don't want to use the term shiny object syndrome, because I don't mean this as a pejorative to talk about Etsy and eBay and all that. But the thing of it is, Amazon has made it so easy, and you really are kind of in a different bucket when you're in another marketplace. Like if you're listing shut down in the US, most likely it's not going to get shut down in Canada and Germany and everywhere else. Everything kind of lives in its own little world. And so if you, kind of like you had said, like if you already understand Amazon, to go into Amazon in another country, you're probably going to actually get better results than you will in American marketplaces outside of Amazon. And really, the money symbol is different. So TJ's helping us with the money symbol part. So
for sure.
All right. So it looks like Tracy has another awesome question. So Tracy, thank you for all these questions. When you compare all the foreign currency companies, what are things we should be looking for? Or another way, what makes you distinct or a favorable choice when we compare? Great question.
So first part, when looking at all the foreign currency companies, I thought that meant currencies. You should be looking for a company that can do everything that you need. So kind of want to limit as many companies as you have to work with, and I think Payoneer can absolutely help with that. From a payment perspective, if you're selling internationally, you need to bring those funds home. We can help with that. We have a dedicated VAT portal and can make any VAT payment for free. So that's a big part if you're selling internationally. Then if you are paying to a supplier, you can do that with the funds that you have, or you can fund your account via a different method and send a payment to a supplier. Uh, One of the most advantageous parts about Payoneer is the network. So we have over 4 million users on our network, which really span everything from large manufacturing suppliers out of China to sellers like yourselves, down to freelancers and remote staff in the Philippines or Southeast Asia or Central Eastern Europe. Anytime that you need to pay funds from one Payoneer user to another Payoneer user, you can do it absolutely for free. So we call that an in-network payment that you can do via our Make a Payment program, and it's completely for free. So, that's what we were talking about. If your supplier, for example, is on the Payoneer network, you can pay them in dollars directly if they're in China, if they're in Vietnam or India or Canada, wherever, and then they would actually pay for the FX. A lot of companies like that, especially companies outside the U.S., because it gives them the opportunity to hold U.S. dollars, something that they don't always have the ability to do with their regular bank. So, as the same way that we pay to them in dollars because it's easier for us, they most likely have to pay out to somewhere in the U.S. or somebody that wants dollars. So they're looking to limit the amount of conversions that they have. Happy to talk further, Tracy, if you have any questions as well.
Yeah, and one thing I just want to chat on a little bit is I was selling about 2 years using the Amazon to US bank account straight through, because I thought, when I heard about different companies that do this type of thing, I was like, well, there's got to be hidden costs and other things like minimum transaction fees or anything like that. So are there other things that I have to consider cost wise, or is it just when the money moves from one currency to the other is kind of where the
Yeah.
fees are?
So it's just when the money moves from one currency to another. So if you were selling in the UK and holding British pounds, there's no additional cost. There's no monthly costs, annual costs, nothing like that. We're pretty transparent about the fees, and we would only there would only be a fee when you convert from one currency to another.
Okay, great. And just to kind of wrap this up here real quick, Tracy did say thank you, all really helpful. So appreciate having you on, Tracy. So
Thanks,
for
Tracy.
everyone that's watching this, if you're saying to yourself, it's worth it to do this, I waited a long time. There's lots of money that I can't ever get back that I've lost in that hidden cost of the foreign transaction fees by not signing up with a company like this. Payoneer is who I use. I've had a good experience with them personally, and so yes, they are the sponsors of the event, as well as they're also I'm an affiliate of Payoneer, but at the same time too, I'm recommending them from personal usage, not just because of a relationship there. So the relationship started when I was already working with TJ as my account manager as a seller. So that's where it all kind of started. So
Long time ago.
Yeah, long time ago. So if you're ready to sign up an account, because what does it cost to set up an account?
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Um, there's no fees to try it out. So above, below, probably on Facebook, it's above in the description, something or other like that on the exits on both sides of the wings type of thing. So, so just head on over there. So I just want to say, TJ, I appreciate this. There's been a lot of good, helpful information. And everybody, thank you for joining us. And if you're watching the replay, thanks for making it all the way through the replay. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin.